Welcome back to Halcyon's RSA 2024 coverage. We're talking to the most interesting people in cybersecurity. And today we're sitting down with Kris Harms, who is an operating partner or a partner at DNX.
I'm a principal.
At DNX Ventures. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I apologize.
That's all right.
Kris and I worked together previously at Silence as well, where you're very deep on the technical side of really helping to build the core product at Silence. Yeah. So a lot of insight from you and a lot of guilty knowledge over the years on building defensive products. So Kris, we have a couple of questions for you today. I think probably the number one that I would have for you is, as somebody who's exposed to a lot of new and up-and-coming companies as part of DNX, you see a lot of trends and you sort of see new innovation, interesting companies coming up. Is there anything that you're seeing? Are companies building new products and new solutions to tackle core challenges in cybersecurity? Or are they kind of chasing after sort of the buzzwords that are around in cyber, from whether it's AI or ML or what have you? What trends are you seeing from new companies?
I think on the trend side, almost across the entire board, you're seeing innovation with the usage of AI in some capacity. And so I think the whole industry is about to turn over in terms of the types of products that we're going to see and the way that we interact with them and the role that AI is playing and machine learning is playing. Now, the question that you have to ask is, where does it really need to be turning over? Where is the machine learning and applications of AI going to be real difference makers? And where is it just sort of an add-on where it's just a nice to have, or it's an extra description or some sort of summary that a foundation model can provide? The other interesting question that I think all the founders out there are probably wondering too is, who ends up winning or benefiting most from the innovations that are occurring in AI? Is it going to be the larger organizations and the larger enterprises with the data, folks like CrowdStrike who have tons of data already? Or are we going to be able to see really hard problems that startups are going to be able to tackle that these larger organizations are going to look to acquire and bring in later? And so for many, figuring out whether you have a long-term value proposition and you're going to be able to sustain and build and work on something that is truly hard and requires sort of a startup mentality, is yet to be seen in terms of where that line is going to be. I think obviously we're starting, when OpenAI was first released, we knew that the GPT store was coming, right? So anybody who was building services on top of OpenAI was going to be fairly undifferentiated and mostly absorbed. And that turned out to be true to a certain extent. There's certainly a lot of garage millionaires out there that are having great SaaS runs, but over the long term, those are likely not going to survive. And so we have to put that mentality on from a cybersecurity perspective and ask ourselves, are we really innovating and truly working on something that is going to be so hard and difficult for a large organization to do that sustains? And that's tricky mostly because of the data. Right.
And the smaller company, obviously less access to data. If you've been around for 10, 15 years, you're sitting on a gold mine essentially, right? So will new companies that are leveraging AI really be accelerated by it? Or to your point, will the larger companies be able to really pick through and mine data and build other solutions on top of what they already have better? So
right.
I think it's a huge topic, especially at the conference this year and
very much so
in general. So on the AI topic, not to beat a dead horse, I guess, but I think you and I were having a conversation a bit about sort of the rise of obviously deep fake audio and video and how concerning that is. And is that a legislation problem? Is it a problem to, should we build products to defend against these things? What's your take on it? Obviously with OpenAI and ChatGPT, it's really been, I think, the broader world's first introduction into AI. This is old news for security. We've been building AI and ML-based defensive products for over a decade plus at this point in time. But sort of the wide public acknowledgement of AI is around usually LLMs, ChatGPT, and deepfakes. So how do we solve this problem? What are your thoughts on that?
We really have to take as an industry a real long-term view on how we are going to handle the deepfakes, because it's not going to go away.
Right.
I was catching up with Kevin Mandy, and I think he made a really interesting point in one of his talks as well, which is I think the lens that we need to look through deepfakes is for all the old folks in the listening, is to think about steganography and what we used to do when we were trying to detect it. The reality is when I was looking through drives in 2004 for Stego, if I didn't know what tool was used to implement the steganography and it wasn't a publicly available one, there was no shot of me being able to figure that out. And so we have to assume that the audio and video will get so good that it will essentially be undetectable, which shifts everything to identity. And I think Caleb Sema had said this at one point, that really the only thing that matters in AI is identity. If we can't identify who has created the content, then it's going to be really hard to trust any of that content. And so I hope, and I suspect that we'll start to see massive signing and crypto in the usage and probably watermarking and other tools and techniques and innovation in that space to make sure that you know where the content came from, it's authenticated, and you're talking to the person that you actually think you're talking to.
Right.
Which in and of itself is a huge challenge. I mean, we thought two-factor auth was going to be the death kiss for attackers stealing credentials, and they still find ways to avoid and
it's still one of the
bypass
top
right?
three ways that folks get in.
Yeah. So we're this is going to be a long battle, I think, and it'll be interesting to see how we progress. But I don't suspect that the detection is going to be anything more than novel, and maybe just dealing with the low-hanging fruit, and then we're going to have to really shift into identity and think differently about the ecosystem and the problem.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. For I think kind of widespread audio and visual deepfakes is one thing. Obviously, if some video is spread around social media, that is a concern. But also, what I don't hear a lot of discussion on is like KYC. Like deepfakes absolutely will impact that area of securing knowing your customer, especially if you're trying to like stand up maybe web infrastructure or payments. That provides a whole new challenge to validating who you're either giving access to or taking money from.
The person I think is going to feel the brunt of deepfake audio and video is going to be support teams. And so if you're out there and you're running a security capability and you are not friendly with your customer support team, the folks who are taking those frontline calls and emails, shift over there, buy some coffee, bring in some donuts, whatever you got to do, because that is where the war it will be. And imagine it, you getting a full audio call from the CEO of the company. Maybe it's a small one, maybe it's a big one. It doesn't matter. That customer support person is not going to turn the CEO down on a password reset, right? And so that training is going to have to be instilled. And for startups that are looking to solve that particular problem, gosh, I reach out, because this is in one of my theses in terms of things that'll be a major issue for enterprises moving forward.
Right. No, I absolutely agree. So I think kind of last topic we wanted to touch about, obviously you have been on the defensive side of security for quite a while at this point in time, doing a lot of, early in your career, a lot of actual incident response, like in the trenches work, moving over into developing AI and ML products, and now into the VC world. So you've kind of seen every aspect of cybersecurity over your career. I'm sure you have some thoughts and some overviews, maybe possibly some advice to young founders in trying to deal with folks like yourself in the VC world. And then also, is there anything that you can, any information or any advice you can give to maybe ease some of the friction potentially between new founders and VC firms?
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of going through 2 unicorn companies and then also founding and raising capital myself. And I thought I had a good understanding on how to think about venture capital. And when I got on the other side, I realized there's still quite a bit that's nuanced about how VC and the venture capital ecosystem work, and the sort of constraints associated with financing that's important for founders who are raising their capital for the first time to really appreciate. And so my advice to founders is really to make sure that you're getting really good advice on what a VC can and can't do. So I'll give you an example of something I was just talking to a founder about that was sort of an aha moment for him. I said, look, when you're interacting with a firm, understanding where they are in their deployment cycle is a really interesting thing to learn, right? Because if you are one of the first investments that they're making in the fund, then that means by the time the reserves come up, you'll be first in line. And so there will likely be capital for you if you get into trouble or if you need an extension. If you're sort of towards the tail end of the deployment, then you're going to be on the tail end of the reserve piece. And you also have to understand what the reserve strategy is for that VC, just so you understand that bottom of like, if I need more capital, where can I go for that?
Right.
Another one is that I think there's a sort of a naive view that the venture capital the venture capital firm is just sort of an endless amount of money that you can get, right? Like it's always their decision as to whether or not they want to invest. The reality is that they don't invest into a startup from more than one fund. So once you get 3-4 years in, and that fund 1 closes and fund 2 opens, in our case, fund 3 has closed and we're now into fund 4. We won't take, and we can't take, because the people are different, money from fund 4 and put it into fund 3 startups. Mm-hmm. And so these are just some of the nuances that when you're thinking about how do I build up the types of VCs that I want to come along as partners on my journey, you really have to understand and be able to appreciate their side of the business. On the venture side, what I've seen is, and I give this advice maybe for VCs that are out there, which is, I think sometimes there's this lack of understanding as to how hard it is to be a founder, like what that stress on a day-to-day really, really looks like. Because in the VC world, we have time. If I don't want to make a decision and I don't have to, right? And the repercussions of that won't be seen for years or years, right? And so we have this time luxury that founders don't have. And so we have to be really cognizant of what a founder is trying to accomplish and in the time windows that they're trying to accomplish it, specifically around fundraising, so that they can get back to work.
Right.
And, oftentimes I'll see, long protracted relationship with VCs and founders that we're invested in. And at the last minute, there's like an additional thing they want. They want an additional discount, or they want to lower the cap. And it puts a founder who's been, stressing over fundraising for 3 to 6 months in a really bad position, right? At that point, they're like, what do I do? Do I tell this VC to go away and, hopefully I'll just bring somebody else in and fill the rest of my round so I can get back to work? Or am I stuck, and do I have to now give a discount or a new cap to all the existing investors? And this negotiation process really should happen up front the best you can, because founders don't want to raise money. That's not, in the ecosystem world, it's not providing any value to the customers that a founder has to take 3 to 6 months off and go raise capital instead of leading his team and building product. And so we'd all be better, I think, if these capital processes were a lot more efficient, a lot more transparent, and each side had a good understanding of what the other side's constraints are.
Sure.
And so that we can move forward with some empathy and move quickly. And so, yeah, there's nuances there. I'm happy to reach out and provide any sort of other observations or guidance. If anybody needs anything, you can find me at Kris@dnx.vc.
Perfect. And would you say that maybe it's even more appropriate simply because of how fast in this space cyber moves? There's kind of new innovation, new companies, and new technologies every couple months. So any delay really is,
it's incredible.
Yeah. The speed of this industry is pretty wild.
It continues to blow my mind, and it continues to accelerate. And it's such an incredible time to be alive. I feel lucky to be experiencing this AI shift. I think
you're not burnt out yet from cyber?
Oh, I get energy from it. I think you got to try and find a way to, right? If you're a person who optimizes for learning and just the natural curiosity of things, God, you're probably thriving right now. So
absolutely. Well, Kris, again, thanks for being here. This is Kris from DNX. We're continuing our RSA coverage, and again, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome.